come to my attention that somebody's been giving high praise to bad books, and it's high time somebody did something about it. We've been fucking lied to. Earlier today, in celebration of Friday the 13th, I dropped my top 10 horror books of all time video. Link in the description below. This time, I thought it would be fun. As I was making up that list, I came up with all these books that I'd read to put on the list. In the process, I found several of them that I thought was, quite frankly, overrated. And let me define this real quick for you, just in the sense of how I'm going to do this video. I don't know, I didn't look up actual ratings, so I don't even know exactly what these books are rated as. When I say overrated, I just generally mean when you come across these books in conversation or on YouTube, people tend to say just how wonderful they are, just how great they are. Some of these books will be on like the greatest books of all time, other people's top 10 greatest horror books ever. And I see them and I go, no, it wasn't though. But it's not number 3 book of all time. What is wrong with you people? So I just hear things about these books and how great they are, and I just think they're not as great as other people say that they are. There's only 4 books on this list. It's not like a top 10 or anything. And most of these books are actually really good books. So before you get mad at me when you see the books that I've put on this list, they are good books. They're just not that next level amazing that people seem to think that they are. They weren't even good enough to make my top 10 list. Let's quit wasting time and let's just get into it. So number 1 on the list is going to be The Girl with All the Gifts. And it's been described as like The Last of Us, but it's a book. And I think they even made a movie out of it. I've never seen it. And to be quite honest, I blame Moid from Media Death Cult for this one, because he talked about this and he like gave it high praise and he talked very well about the book, and I thought that sounds great. And I went out and I bought it and it's super fucking average, like real average. It's not a bad book. This is the worst book on this list by far, but I'd say maybe a 5 out of 10 tops. Like how do you give this, what? Get out of here, Moid. This was not great, but nowhere near as good as he said it was. But anyway, definitely overrated based on that one opinion that I heard that one time. Now, on to some real heavy hitters. I Am Legend. Let's upset some people now. I would say this is a good book. Okay, good book, but it's overrated. It's about a man. He's the last man on Earth, and he's hunting down some zombie vampires. And that's about it. I do like the messaging in it. I do like the ending of it. I do like what the book had to say. But all in all, to get to what it had to say, it was fine, you know. But it definitely isn't supposed to be on some top 10 greatest books of all time list. If I'm being honest, as far as Richard Matheson is concerned, I had way more fun reading Hell House than I had reading this one. Now, to be fair, this one had a better message. This one had an overall better themes involved in the book. But it was not the most fun to read. I don't know. It was good. Just not as good as people tell you it is. That out of the way, there's only 2 left. And if you think for a second that my boy back there, Stephen King, is immune to being a part of this list, you would be mistaken, because the next one is Salem's Lot. I have read this book twice now. Twice. The first time I got about halfway through it and I DNF'd it. Not because it was bad, but because I wasn't enjoying it in the way that I thought that I should be enjoying it. Because you always hear Salem's Lot, Salem's Lot. People talk about it so much, about how great this book is. It's one of the ones that just ranks high on everybody's list of best Stephen King books. And I wasn't even in the mood to read it when I read it. So I was getting about halfway through and I wasn't enjoying myself or the book. And I was like, maybe I'm not, hold up. And I stopped reading. So I'll come back when I'm like really eager and like chomping at the bit to get some new King. And I'll give it a second chance, a better chance. And I read it a second time. This time I read it the whole way through. And I just thought it was fine. I mean, it was a good book, but it was not special. Definitely not peak King. At least not in my opinion. It's a nice little story about a town, and you get to know the town and the people and all of the stuff that King's really good at, and he does good at it here, but it's definitely not a standout for me, at least in any regards as far as a King book is concerned. Not the best villain, not the best town, not the best characters. I just was like, yeah, super average King. Why does everyone like this one so much? I don't get it. Sorry, Steve. Anyway, moving on. And last but not least, and I did put this one last because I feel like this is probably the most egregious of all of my choices. Of all the books that I chose to put on this list, when this one just might be the most triggering, or maybe it's just the most controversial pick. You decide, because I would say Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House is overrated. I have heard so much about this book. I was so excited to read it. There is so many people that say that it's on, this is the one. It will, if you watch other people's top 10 lists of the greatest horror books, I know you'll see this one at least a few times. And it just doesn't need to be on their lists. It is a fine book. It's a good book, but it's nowhere near peak anything. It's just not. It was meh. It's a good book. Don't get me wrong. It is a good book, but it is just not that peak fiction. It was okay. It was a haunted house story. The haunted house wasn't super haunted. It wasn't super scary. It wasn't super moody. It wasn't super atmospheric. It had a good ending. The ending was probably the most interesting and best part about it, but getting there wasn't necessarily exciting either. It was just super, I don't know. It was not what I was expecting, especially with the high praise that it gets. And I think Stephen King said that it was the scariest book he's ever read. And that's just a lie. I'm sorry. How much have you read, Stephen? But anyway, like I said, it is quite a good book, and it is a classic. And if you are into reading the classics and the origins of styles and genres, I recommend reading it. But I would not put it on a top 10 list. I just wouldn't. I don't feel like it just holds up to that standard, especially when you have much older work like the works of H.P. Lovecraft that just far outshine anything that's in this book here. Not to say that this is a bad book. I'm just going to repeat that until I'm blue in the face because I don't want the world to come after me. The internet will crush me into dust. Anyway, is there anything that you just heard people rave about, maybe even me in that last video, that you're like, that wasn't as good as you said it was? You're a son of a bitch and a liar. I would love to know about it. Please put it down in the comments below. As always, everybody, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Earlier today, in celebration of the Friday... Oh my God. Earlier today, in celebration of the 4th of... Why do I want to say the 4th of July? Earlier today, in... Earlier today, in...